Okay, so it looks like I'm live. So welcome to my weekly happiness question and answer session. Uh, if you don't have a question, I've got a whole bunch of questions. It's the 1st of January 2021, and I think in the new year somehow maybe there's more of a chance of people becoming a bit more thoughtful about their lives and thinking they want to make resolutions and plans and what they want to do differently, which is great. And so because of that, I'm trying to think of, or trying to go for the bigger questions like what's the purpose of life, how can we find it. That's if you know much about psychology, you will know that that's one of the key things we need as human beings, and when we don't have that, we're really quite miserable. So it's interesting how the human spirit works and all the things we need and we don't really realize we need. So let me do a quick intro generally to this question answer thing. So bigquestionanswered.com is where you can check out the weekly show, older shows, and there's a whole bunch of other materials there. This is the website, like common questions, lots of questions about life, all there. And all these ideas about happiness are from Islam. I'm a Muslim, but I'm not particularly anybody special. And what I mean by that is that the ideas that are useful for finding happiness are pretty simple and easy to practice. You don't have to be some great guru to find happiness. Happiness is not a complicated thing, which is something I want to talk about today. Um, Right. Yeah, so let's get started. I always like to start my shows with a weekly happiness tip, and something I've kind of had a kind of a mini discussion on was, is happiness tricky? Uh, and in Islam, all you need are two things. And really, the first thing is to believe. Now, a lot of people don't like the idea of believing, simply believing, because they think that's not logical. What Islam means by belief is logical, what is reasonable, what when you listen to the truth within yourself, you will come to that. Maybe that sounds a bit wishy-washy, but realistically, always Islam is always saying, look at the night and day, look at all the things around you. They're all evidence that God exists. God being existing is a logical thing. So all we're talking about when we say believe is being honest with yourself. That's all it means. And when you believe in God, then and you also believe in the practices God is expecting you to do, which is simply being good, then you will be happy. Okay? So spirituality, if you've got good spirituality, you're going to be uh, happy. Um, so believe and do good deeds. So what is it? Belief also, I want to talk about that a bit more. Belief also means that when you it, it's not an easy word, let's say. In some ways it's not an easy word. What I mean by that is that if you really believe that God exists, and it's quite obvious to that God must be the sustainer of our world, otherwise it's not really God. Then when you rely on God as being a sustainer, and you know that you can communicate with God, because that's a natural part of God. Like, why would God not be able to communicate with you? That's a bit weird. You can communicate. It's not very hard. Okay, so um, when you truly believe in God, when you rely on God as a sustainer of your world and your life, then you'll easily be happy. But you will know when you learn about who God is, then you will know that God expects you to be a good person. And so if you simply believe and there's no action, and that action is to be a good person, then you cannot be happy. So you need to believe, realize, be honest with yourself, step one. Step two, have good actions. And that's it. If you do those things, suddenly you will find yourself being happy. God always tries his best for you to be happy. He wants you to be happy, but it's our ego that makes happiness a difficult thing. And that's a lot of what I want to get across. I'm going to say so many things in slightly different ways, but they're all the same ideas of you got to believe. You got to believe because it's the honest thing to do. And when you believe, you got to do good things. Otherwise, your belief is fake. It can't be real. It's not possible to believe in God, the sustainer who is kind to everybody, okay, and know that, and then still not do good things. That those good deeds are just evidence of your belief. And also there is there is something else I want to explain, which is that this physical and spiritual are very much tied together. So for example, if you fake crying, if you do the physical act of crying, even if it's not real, it will have an emotional effect on you. And that emotional side of things is your spiritual side or your soul. So very important to believe and do good deeds. And that's it. That's how easy happiness is. But I want to talk about, although that sounds, for some people actually a lot of people, they need a more broken down version of that guide to happiness. How do you believe? So here's a 3-step guide, or maybe it's a 4-step guide. I'm not sure. We'll see how it breaks down. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So first of all, believe and do good deeds. That's from the Holy Quran. And by the way, you don't have to be a Muslim to practice these things. I think inevitably you will be a Muslim by practicing these things, but you don't have to call yourself a Muslim. The idea is Islam is a very inclusive religion, and God just wants you to succeed. So let's not talk about labels at the moment. It's not the most important thing. So how do you believe? Here's this step-by-step guide. It says, you will not enter paradise. That means you will not find happiness until you have faith, or you believe. It's another word for the same thing. And you will not have faith until you love each other. So now it's beginning. You begin to find out something about what belief is. Why is it that you need love to have belief? Because what love is being selfless, and then when you have love, you become open-minded. An open heart is an open mind. Okay, and when you have that open mind, then you accept truth, which is beliefs. Yeah, that's all belief really means: accepting the truth, being a good person. So yeah, when you love each other, you will have faith. Those are very much the one and the same thing. Shall I show you something that if you did, you would love each other, spread peace between yourselves? So another translation of this thing that's come from Arabic would be spread the salam, which means the act that Muslims do, and Christians originally, and Jewish people still do. They shake hands and they say assalamu alaikum, or Jewish people say assalamu alaikum. So that act, the physical act, again, physical acts are really important. The physical act connects people, and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that simply by shaking hands, it removes hatred between two people. So that's the secret behind finding love between people. And when you say, oh, by the way, what does assalamu alaikum mean? Or what does salam mean? Peace. It means, I wish you peace. That's the short version. Okay, I wish you peace. And when you wish people peace, that wishing translates to an inner feeling, which is love. And then when you have love, you have an open heart, which is an open mind, which leads to belief. And when you have those beliefs, then believe those beliefs are actions that lead to happiness. Like simply those actions like being generous, that's what God requires of you. And then suddenly you're not over self-involved, because that's what sadness comes from. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of ideas there. Let's go to the next thing. So I keep saying to people, oh yeah, sure, I'll go over this topic. And then I realize I've got loads of topics. But Ikigai and purpose seems to be coming up under my radar lately. And somebody shared this nice picture. Let's zoom in. You can have a look. How to find, it came under this video of how to find your purpose. Very interesting title. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's like, oh, find out what you're good at, find out what you love, what does the world need, but there's not really a recipe for finding your purpose. Sometimes you get misleading titles. The titles say something like, oh, this is a way to find your purpose, but then it says in the video or something, oh, actually, this is not how to find purpose. Maybe you'll find it by doing this activity of, finding all the things you're passionate about and whatever, over and over again, and eventually maybe you find your purpose. So in reality, this is not really a way to find a purpose, and there's a lot of limitations to even a thought process here. But does it mean that Ikigai is totally useless? I don't think so. I think there is some value in it. So later on, I'm going to talk about people who, the areas in where people have lived the longest. And one of those places are in Japan, where Ikigai, the idea of Ikigai, comes from. And they have an Ikigai, apparently. Each person has a sense of purpose. So I don't think this formula particularly does anything for you. It's good to think about what you love, and it's good to reflect on what's happening in the world. It's better than being completely stupid and just doing things randomly. But I think maybe, I'm not sure if all these people who have been living, are sentient, and people live over 100 years, they necessarily see Ikigai in this sort of form. Okay, they simply think you should be purposeful in your life. You should want to make a difference to your life. You should want to be part of community. And those are all things that they do. That's part of their lifestyle. And not just in Japan, but so many other countries where people live long and live happily. They have certain qualities of being purposeful. Anyway, I want to talk about a bit more about purpose, because that without purpose, we are really miserable. And increasingly in the West, people really try hard to find purpose. And I want to talk about some of the things that make people unsuccessful at finding their purpose. And one of the key things that makes it hard to find your purpose is that if you think your purpose has to be something to do with your job or making money. So everybody's like, oh, I wish I could find my purpose so that I could be successful, because that's what they really have in mind. And then because they're tying these things together, these things that will not be together, ever meet really, they're making their lives really difficult. And so somehow finding your purpose seems to become like such an impossible thing to achieve. So let me explain why simply trying to find something that makes money and that being your purpose are impossible things. Let me just read a few beautiful things. So 1 second. Actually, let's mute so I can cough nicely. Okay, so here we go. So all that I know does not come from me, it comes from Islam, and Islam has its spiritual leaders, and in particular, this age of ours is of the promised Messiah, otherwise sometimes like known as the second coming of Jesus, or the guided one. There's so many names for this one person who's been promised by so many different religions. So it's another interesting thing by itself. Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, they've all got these people who they were supposed to be second comings, or they promised a reformer in our age. So this is some writing by this person. You can tell me what you think. So in terms of finding your purpose, he says this, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he says, it is obvious that man is not in a position to appoint the purpose of his own life. I suppose that makes sense, right? We're all trying to find the purpose or make a purpose for our life, but we didn't make ourselves. So how do we decide that we're going to make a purpose for our lives? So it is obvious that man is not in a position to appoint the purpose of his own life, for he does not come into the world of his own accord, nor will he depart therefrom of his own will. He is a creature, and the one who created him and invested him with better and higher faculties than those of all other animals has also appointed a purpose for his life. Whether anyone penetrates to it or not, the purpose of man's creation, without a doubt, is the worship and understanding of God and a complete devotion to him. Now, at some point, this point here, I feel, having grown up here, because of people's disconnection with God and distrust of God and religion, they might not like that last bit. Oh, the purpose is to worship God. But proper understanding of worship means to be at one with. So when you when you look at a beautiful scene in nature, okay, and you feel at peace when you see that, that's just a reflection of God. So that's all we're talking about. We're talking about becoming increasingly beautiful, and the way you do that, by the way, is by doing good things, as we talked about earlier on. But I'm going to read something else from this same book called The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam, which you can get from, I should go to it, isn't it? Look, you can go back to bigquestionsanswered.com, and if you see free books, the book I'm reading, they're all free, these things. There's nothing I'm selling here. Okay, The Philosophy of the Teaching of Islam talks about purpose and the existence of God and so many other important things about how to live our lives. It's kind of basically something from the Holy Quran. It explains parts of the Holy Quran about some core questions. But anyway, continuing, so you can get in better words than mine an understanding of why it is that we need to connect to God. Just looking at the time, looking for questions if there are any. Of the natural search for an exalted being, so exalted as in basically God, somebody who's far beyond or above us. Okay, of the natural conditions of man or human beings, is his search after an exalted being towards whom he has an inherent attraction. This is manifested by an infant, a child, baby, by an infant from the moment of its birth. As soon as it is born, it displays a spiritual characteristic that it inclines towards its mother and is inspired by love of her. So let me just read that a bit better. This is manifested, so the attraction towards God is manifested in this way. As soon as it is born, this child, it displays a spiritual characteristic that it inclines towards its mother and is inspired by love of her. So somehow, for whatever reason, feels connected to her. As its faculties develop and its nature begins to display itself more openly, this inherent quality displays more and more. So when it's able to express itself, this baby, you see that it shows its love more and more. It finds no comfort anywhere except in the lap of its mother. So that's really strange. Like, you give it all sorts of things, but for some reason it needs to be connected to its mother. If it is separated from her mother and find itself at a distance from her, its life becomes bitter. Heaps of bounties fail to beguile it away from its mother, in whom all its joy is concentrated. It feels no joy apart from her. What then is the nature of the attraction which an infant feels so strongly towards its mother? It is the attraction which the true Creator has implanted in the nature of man. The same attraction comes into play whenever a person feels love for another. It is a reflection of the attraction that is inherent in man's nature towards God, as if he is in search of something that he misses, the name of which he has forgotten, and which he seeks to find in one thing or another, which he takes up from time to time. A person's love of wealth, of offspring, or wife, or his soul being attracted towards a musical voice are all indications of his search for the true beloved. You can read more of this brilliant text, and so many people have said that this text, this book, The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam, not surprisingly, has totally changed their lives. So anyway, so that's a bit about purpose. Ask me questions about it if you want. So let's talk I'm in the next 10 minutes. I'm kind of slightly behind. So life, living long and healthy life, something known as the blue zone, where there are about 5 different places around the world where they've got a very high percentage of centenarians, basically people who've lived over 100 years, and they've got very similar habits. So I'll have a look at that in a second. Let me have a quicker look at a question that's just popped up. When you read the statement earlier about being wholly devoted to God, I thought that complete devotion to cause, if it is the right cause, I think would give a person a lot of peace and contentment. Okay, so I thought the complete devotion to a cause, probably. Yeah, sorry, I'm not picking on certain words. I'm just trying to understand them. Okay, if it is the right cause, will give person a lot of peace. So that's very interesting point you made there, because very much part of being devoted to God is doing good works. So, and I briefly mentioned something from the Holy Quran: believe and do good works. So believe is realizing God exists, but doing good works is core to it. And I was going to mention something like this later on, but what was I gonna? And everyone has a goal which dominates him. This is a verse of the Holy Quran. And everyone has a goal which dominates him. Vie or compete with one another in good works. Wherever you be, Allah will bring you all together. Surely Allah has the power to do all that He wills. So people have different goals in their life. People assign different goals in their lives. Their true purpose is only one thing: to connect with God. So if you and that dominates their lives, that they're obsessed with, let's just say, or become obsessed with. But if you simply do good works and keep doing as many good works as possible and encourage other people to do good works and compete with them, immediately that obsession with that doing those good works, that will change your life, and that will give you peace of mind and contentment. So yeah. So I would agree with that. And I think, so what are the things I like to try to come across? I'm going to spend another 6 minutes on this since you brought it up. And I'm trying to do things in 10-minute segments so I can make chapters in the videos. Makes it easier for me. Okay, so if you, what was I going to say? Yeah, so very much a purpose of people find it very confusing what to do with their lives. But what I'm saying is, if you practice simply doing good things, you will see yourself becoming happier, and then you won't be confused about your purpose. Okay, one of the reasons why people find their purpose such a difficult thing to do, or goal setting such a difficult thing to do, is because they're doing things that are materialistic, that don't make them happy, and they go, I tried this and I tried that and I tried so many things, and they're all related to making money, and then they find, oh, I'm not finding happiness. So here's a really simple direction. Simply start doing good things and you'll start finding that you are happier. It's very much, yes. The big question is recognizing the right thing to commit to. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to, since you brought that up, and every time I explain something, sometimes I explain it in a very general way, and it really helps when somebody makes a comment, so then I can explain it in more detail. So what I'm going to explain in more detail is what I just read about appointing a purpose to your life. Okay, so, and it's mentioned briefly here. So when people try to appoint purposes to their lives, and often they appoint a short-term sort of purpose to their life that has only basically to make money of one way or the other, some sort of materialistic purpose to their life. Okay, and that is very short term, and it can't be the true purpose of your life. How can it be the true purpose of your life if you, for example, making lots of money, you can't take that money to the next life? Okay, then the question becomes, is there a next life? Okay, so in short, how do we define what is your purpose? It's got to be the thing that has, let me click on that one, the thing that allows you to achieve the most with what you have. And so that was what was kind of being pointed out here. I'm sure there are better references, but what was it saying here? He is a creature, so you are a creature, and the one who created and invested him with better and higher faculties than those of other animals. So basically, you have certain high faculties, and those are essentially that you can connect to God. And there is nothing higher than connecting to God. So that must be your ultimate purpose. If you had to find a purpose, that would be it, to connect to God. So let me explain it in a slightly different way. I'm sitting on a chair. I always go with the chair example if you've ever heard this before. So on a chair, you've got potential. This is a wooden chair, so it's got the potential of being firewood, or it can be useful for me to sit down and do higher level activities rather than just make my hand warmer, which I could do from the radiator anyway. I choose to sit on a seat rather than burn the seat. Okay, that way I can get multiple uses of it, and it's the higher purpose for this seat. In the same way, you have to find the highest purpose, the best use of yourself, and that will be more in line, or more likely to be in line with your purpose. And so God has made it easy. So that's the kind of reasoning that you should decide, what is your purpose? Do you choose something a lower level, like making money, which will last you this lifetime, but as people have found that it doesn't make them much happier, or find a higher purpose like connecting with God, which has proven over and over to give people peace and purpose? Let me see what other comment we've got here. I think if there is an ultimate purpose behind all creation, then the Creator would have provided clues or lessons from the world we live in into understanding that purpose. Yes. So God talks about your conscience, and your conscience is sort of a judge over you. So as and it's constantly telling you if you're going towards your purpose or not. Whenever you're doing something wrong, you start feeling miserable, but people ignore their conscience repeatedly throughout their lives, and they become increasingly more miserable. So your conscience lets you feel happier when you're doing the right thing. So there is a feedback mechanism inside you that tells you when you're doing the right thing and when you're doing the wrong thing. So in Islam, for example, it says, it effectively says, don't worry, if you will not find heaven in the next life unless you find happiness in this life or paradise in this life. So the Quran, for example, talks about the two gardens, and gardens in spiritual talk means paradise. So just in case you're wondering if I made that up or not. So so yes, there is a way to find your purpose, and one of the key things you're told to find your purpose is simply be honest to yourself. The more honest to yourself you are, the more you start finding your direction in life. For example, if you're not Muslim, but you don't, and you start being honest and you ask yourself, does Islam have the answers that I'm looking for better than anywhere else? And then you follow that because it's the most honest thing to do, even though it might be difficult because it might not be part of your culture. By being honest, you start finding your purpose and your direction. Yeah, so I think if there's an ultimate purpose, just rereading this comment, behind all creation, then the Creator would have provided clues. Yeah, so your conscience is a clue, and your brain is made to work logically if you're honest. So those, that's evidence in itself. And every time, so when you start being honest and listening to your conscience, and every time you do something wrong, you realize that's the wrong direction. And every time you do something right, you find that's the right direction. And it's really quite simple. And if you hear the truth, which is you need to connect with God and be at one with God, and then you practice that, you'll find that you'll become happier, at peace. You'll have no stress in your life because, for example, you become aware that God is, the more you depend on God, by the way, the more God helps you, and you'll find that in the experience. And God promises that He'll respond to you in the Quran, for example. So there's lots of feedback, in short. Okay, let's keep going with this. Maybe another 10 minutes. Okay, another 7 minutes. I mean, we could just go on and on like this. Hamid, thanks for your questions. I'm just thinking 10-minute kind of segments. How am I going to cut the video up? Shouldn't really be thinking about that too much. Anyway, so it may be worth considering how we approach this question to everyday objects, e.g. some gadget that we're not sure of the purpose of. How do we guess its purpose? Okay, so that's another interesting comment. And a lot of the answers are inside this piece of text that I read. So how do we know what the purpose of a phone is? Let's pick up my prop here, even though everybody knows what a phone looks like. So how do I know what a phone looks like? Well, I mean, what a phone? What's the purpose of the phone? Well, I didn't really read what do you call it? 1 second. Do you have a cough? So by the way, I've had corona, so just recovering from that. So I didn't really have to read the guide for this, but maybe if there was, I've never seen one of these before, I'll probably have to read the guide. So who creates the guide? It's the creator, and it's the creator who tells you best how to use it, especially if this phone was super ultra modern or something and I didn't really know how to use it. I'd definitely have to refer to some sort of guide. And so the way human beings work, they're super high tech and um, have lots of, let's say, things that are not obvious about how we work, what makes us happy. For example, we need connection. That's a weird thing, isn't it? Why would we need connection? But apparently we do. So God is the guide for us. He's our creator. Okay. The one who created him, that is us, invested us in better and higher faculties than other animals. So we're not ordinary animals. Okay. And appointed a purpose to our life. Yeah. So, but let's think about, yeah, so there is not much more. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to give a more in-depth answer, a more complicated answer, but actually the answers are super simple. Like, yeah, okay, how do you find the purpose of anything? It's the creator that decides it, okay? Or you can guess it. I suppose that's another way. You can guess the purpose if you don't want to read the Holy Quran or the other spiritual guides that tell you your purpose, the purpose decided by God, and that's how God communicates through spiritual scriptures and other ways. But if you wanted to guess it by not reading these books, you wanted to do your own independent assessment, then we go back to what I was saying earlier on, where you've got an interesting mirror, as it were, a reflection piece that helps you work out what is right and wrong. So you use that. So you've got an inbuilt system called your conscience that tells you what your purpose is by listening to that. But that's a very quiet voice, as it were, and it might take a long time. So to make that job easier, you've got the Holy Quran, and you've got explanations of the Holy Quran. You've got people who been practicing it their whole lives. You can ask them. So that would be the honest approach. So like, say if you wanted to learn mathematics, you would just ask a mathematician, or you go to YouTube, you find out from other people. You don't say, I will just ignore everybody and I will recreate mathematics from the beginning or something, from first principles or something like that. That would be a bit silly. So you've got lots of avenues to find your purpose. Yeah. Let me see what else I can say. Thanks for all the comments, by the way, if I haven't said that already. It's been really helpful. So yeah, so purpose is a really important thing. Without purpose, we're lost. It's one of our basic needs. And if you don't believe me, there's a great book, I think called by Victor something or other, Man's Need for Purpose. Man's Need for Purpose. Victor, he's a top psychologist. Man's Search for Meaning. Okay, so really Viktor Frankl, yeah, and it's through purpose that we find any direction. And Viktor Frankl explains that people, for example, who survived a Holocaust, he survived it himself. He was in Auschwitz, I think. He said that what the people who survived the Holocaust were people who had purpose in their life, and it was the thing that kept them going. And the people who didn't, they just gave up. So it has so many benefits to have a purpose to your life and a direction. So yep, cool. 1 second. Don't forget to unmute myself. Okay, so yes, like talking to an iPhone use to see how they use the iPhone. Okay, I'm not sure if I get that one. Yes, like talking to an iPhone. Use does something they use the phone. Okay, I'm not sure if I quite get that one. You might need to help me. But in the meantime, I'm going to pick another topic. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. User. Okay. So, yes, like talking to an iPhone user. To see how they use the phone. Oh, I get it. Yeah. Okay, so you can, if you don't know how to use an iPhone, for example, which is a big problem for Android users, find it very confusing. They can talk to another iPhone user, and the guy, oh yeah, fine, that's how you. So you would hope so let's think about that analogy. Does it make sense? So, for example, you would only talk to another iPhone user if they seem to know what they're doing, you know. Um, and some iPhone users are better than other iPhone users. Some iPhone users know how to really take advantage of an iPhone, and some people don't know how to play music, for example, or surf the web or whatever. That's basic use of an iPhone, I suppose. So you can talk to different iPhone users. Uh, so just in case anybody's getting confused about what we're talking about here, it's like if you want to find the purpose of your life, then you ask different people and and ask the people who have the best answers. So these are all very simplistic and obvious ways and things that make sense. So just like if you want to find the purpose of an object, you ask different people, and depending on the answers they give you, you listen to the person who's got the best answers, the most useful answers, the ones that seem to work the most. You know, if somebody claims to be an iPhone expert but doesn't know how to make a phone call, then you ignore that person. You say, well, you don't even know how to make a phone call. Same with purpose of life. If there's somebody who can give you all the answers and easily, then why would you not listen to that purpose? Sorry, or that person rather. Um, so thanks for that. Hopefully some of that explanation is useful for lots of people. We had a lot of discussion about that. And I'm going to blend this conversation about purpose into how to live a long and healthy life. So purpose is not just a one word sort of description of like, my purpose is to, I don't know, connect with God, or I don't know, eat lots of burgers, whatever. There's a lot of action in line with that. So, for example, purpose, if your purpose is to connect with God, that actually means, because God wants you to do so many good things, and I've said this right in the beginning, the if your purpose is to connect with God, it also means you have to do good things, and that involves being connected to community, and these things are things that helps you live over 100 years, for example, statistically, according to this Blue Zones study. And for example, even if you really follow your purpose, that also according to Islam, means, for example, eat according to a fixed measure, you will find it beneficial. This is the saying of Prophet Muhammad, right? So in line with your purpose is eating in small amounts, and then you'll find, just like these centenarians, whatever they're called, the people who live over 100 years, that's one of the things people have found, these social scientists have found, that they eat in small and fixed amounts. So what I'm trying to say is, amazingly and super accurately does Islam make your life better just by following it. And again, when you, this is another way of looking at your purpose. The more you are in line with your purpose, the more your body is happy. So for example, if I've got this, okay, let's see how happy this phone will be. Trying to get it in shot. Okay, how happy this phone will be if I toss it in water. This might be a little bit waterproof, but it's not that waterproof. Okay, it won't be happy and it'll stop working. Just like that, like if you follow Islam, you see your body working better, you will be happier and healthier, and you'll live longer and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so that's another way of judging your purpose. And there's so many things I want to quickly outline. So being active. So in Islam, it's always, Prophet Muhammad used to race his wife, for example. Having fun was an important part of the lifestyle. Community. Islam is always talking about talking to your neighbor, like in our what's it called, our road, like we're the most friendly people in our family, like we're always giving presents and stuff for Christmas or New Year's, whatever, even if we don't celebrate it. And they say having faith and purpose, these are the key things that make you live longer. And respect for the elderly, that's a key part of Islam. For example, Islam says if you respect somebody, God will find somebody to respect you when you're older. Things like that. That's just a saying of Prophet Muhammad. So, okay, what else have I got here? Another comment? 1 second. Okay, the one that enables you to make the best use of it. Yeah. So we're having a sort of like a very open approach to what is your purpose. So if you don't want to believe me that your best purpose, your best life, as it were, is to be connected with God and listen to God and therefore do good deeds, don't believe me, try out different things and you'll find that you'll come to the same result anyway. Or try to be as open-minded as possible and listen to truth which sits well with you, with your conscience. That is the method by which God has put there. Listen to that and you'll find you come to the same result anyway. Okay, so what else is there to say? Yeah. Okay. So let's try another topic. We've got 2 minutes actually. I'm going to stick with that for this one for a little bit. So one of the things I want to talk about for about another minute of what makes you live longer is community. And the reason why that is, so let me talk about a bit more about psychology. If you want to Google this, you'll find that one of the other basic human needs, as on top of purpose, is connection. Okay, and when we don't have connection, we feel isolated, and that You might think that's a small thing, but actually being lonely is one of the biggest causes of death. You might say, how can loneliness cause death? It causes all sorts of internal reactions. It's called inflammation, and all sorts of stress hormones just by being by yourself. So definitely community is really important. And welcome back, Muhammad Abaydat. I really enjoyed our conversation last time. I remember there was one other person called Yusuf, and he was talking about falling in love. And if you could have, if you got a question, Muhammad Abaydat, I remember there was some important question. I think it was on along the same lines, and I felt like maybe I could have answered the question better. So, but one thing that could have helped me answer the question better is if I asked you more questions, so I could have fully understand the situation that you were referring to last time. So yeah, I can't remember what it was exactly, but because I'm getting it mixed up with what Yusuf was saying about falling in love. But yeah, it's always good to hear from you guys. Hopefully, being a doctor isn't being too much hard work. Because last time you told me, I think you were a fifth-year medical student. It's a lot of hard work doing that. Okay, so yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to rejoin in. Anyway, so I do like to pick up a kind of, I try to mix it up so that people understand a bit more about what this show is about. So happiness is essentially navigating your way around this world. And part of that is understanding the world. So one thing some people, one person has said to me is that, one second. Is that capitalism has failed us. Okay, so there's two things I want to talk about here. First of all, is it capitalism's fault that the world is terrible? Okay, and I would say that capitalism, and this is an Islamic point of view, that Islam does not hate capitalism. It's just like you cannot hate something that's effectively inanimate and does not have any feeling. So you cannot hate money, for example. It's what you do with money that makes the difference. So capitalism has its uses, and the reason why Islam accepts capitalism to some extent, that is because it is a natural way to get money to the right places, generally the right places, because people who have not thought about economics too much, which is probably a lot of people, probably don't realize that getting money to the right place is a really tricky business. What do I mean by that? For example, if you're running, I'm just thinking of some random business that sells chocolate. People want chocolate, say some specialized sort of chocolate drink or something. And if you don't have money getting to that shop that needs to, buy the chocolate and then create it and sell it and all that kind of stuff, then what happens is you won't have a chocolate business. So that might sound really like, what is this guy talking about? Let me explain it a different way. The alternative is something like communism, where people decide, some central government decides who gets money and when and how much and all this kind of stuff. But for one, or maybe even if you had thousands of people deciding that, it's very hard for people to make those judgments. And so capitalism requires people to do hard work to get money, and then the money gets to them. Okay, it's very much like a living body. An economy is like a living body, and um, and the way energy is transferred is through blood. and the body has lots of veins, and I think they're called capillaries, the smaller ones. Or you can tell me about this actually, Mohammed Abaydat, the medical student, if I'm saying the right words. Okay, but it's not an easy job to get that blood to every corner of the body so that you can function properly. And that's the same thing with the economy. So let me see, what does Mohammed Abaydat say here? Happiness is the harmonious homeostasis. That's the word I was looking for last time, I think. With the self, as well as between the self and its environment. Okay, interesting. Okay, so I'm very big fan of this word homeostasis, because in a way it's another way of saying balance. Okay, so just an explanation of homeostasis. What does it mean? It means when something, say your body gets too hot, then you start sweating, and then it cools down. So your body's constantly trying to find its balance, and the balance is in a certain place, like 36 degrees or something is your internal body temperature. Now, why is that very much in line with Islam? So let me give you a couple of very interesting examples. So, for example, in Islam, you are told not to, and this is very much in line with what it means to be happy and how to stay happy, the homeostasis. Let's click on that. Okay, for example, in Islam, you are told not to laugh out too loud. So most people who don't fully understand their own happiness, they think happiness is just about getting excited, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, getting as much stuff as possible. But when you go too high, a lot of doctors will tell you, for example, you like having alcohol, your body tries to find that homeostasis and actually makes you depressed. So alcohol, for example, is known as a depressant. So it's very interesting, that word homeostasis. I would agree with that. And the word, since Muhammad is an Arab, he might appreciate or know the meaning of this word that further explains something about homeostasis. The word sabr. Sabr loosely means to be patient, but if you look at the definition of sabr in the lexicons or the dictionaries, you'll find that it means to be not too happy and not too sad, finding the middle. So very good, interesting. I would agree that happiness is finding that sort of homeostasis, and but that might sound really boring. So it balance for each person at different times is different. So what I mean by saying by that is that, for example, you should, when you're giving money, you're being generous or giving money for charity. At one point in time, you might only be able to give £10 because before that you were really stingy. Okay, so what you do is you give £10 this month, and then next month, because your capacity has grown, your level or your balance would be different, and then you would give like £20 next month, for example. So that's your ability grows, and your ability to receive happiness also grows. So it's not quite like the body's homeostasis where you can only must always be 36 degrees or whatever it is. It's similar to that. I'm not. Let me see if I can disagree with something. So I feel like the happiness is a harmonious homeostasis within the self, as well as the self and its environment. You know what? I would agree with a lot of that. So Islam means to be at peace, and there's three elements of being at peace: being at peace with God, being at one with God, your relationship with God, being at peace as an individual, no, sorry, with your environment, and there was another one, I can't remember the three kind of meanings of being at peace. So yes, being at peace with other people as a community, that's such an important part of Islam, for example, in Islam it says, if your neighbor says you're bad, you're bad. If your neighbor says you're good, you're good. So these are being at peace with your local community, which are your neighbors. And in Islam, by the way, your neighbors are 40 houses to your right and 40 houses to your left. So pretty much your community. Islam teaches that, and everything you do in Islam will make you happy. So by not being friends with your neighbors, you will be miserable, and that's why so many people are miserable in London, because they're so lonely and disconnected. Let me just read a few comments before we're done. The concept of balance is very important in Islam. Adil justice. Okay, yeah, cool. Some things I don't know, so you could help me with. Very interesting. So please do Surah Al-Nahl. I'm just going to check that up. 1691. So I definitely will check that up. Thank you for educating me. And last comment here: happiness is not an ideal of reason, but of imagination. Interesting. But of imagination. I don't understand that really, Mohammed Abed. Happiness is not an ideal or reason, but of imagination. So I don't know if you're saying happiness is just something that you have to imagine, but I would say, as a last comment, happiness is easy to find, just start doing good things. But before that, you have to believe, because if you don't believe that things will be okay and that God will take care of you, then that happiness is a fleeting happiness. Like if you know that God is the person who gives you air every day for free, and you can rely on that God, then you're good. I suppose. I don't know if I can add anything more to that. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining in, Hamid and Mohammed. I really appreciate it. And maybe catch you next week. It's every Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. UK time. Please join me next week, or even ask questions in the comments, and I'll try to answer them in depth next time. Thank you.